let's go report card for the Vanderbilt game. Divvy out your reports and what you think about the Vols as they beat Vanderbilt over the weekend. And it wasn't close. I had a feeling in the first half it might be, but that was quickly dispelled by the Vols and their ability to control the line of scrimmage on both sides. So let's hand out the report card. And it's brought to you by friends at Rick Terry Jewelry Supply. They've got the fire opals that are awesome. That is Rick Terry. Again, Rick Terry, you need to check him out for the game day jewelry. So, report card, who stood out in your mind?
All right. So, report card, quarterbacks. Can you do anything other than A plus? Whatever you think of Joe Milton, that was a flawless performance on Saturday. And by the way, I grade units. So I'm including what Nico did coming in late in the game. Nico was also flawless when he played on Saturday. The only player who wasn't flawless was Gaston Moore when he but Gaston Moore did throw a touchdown pass that was dropped. You saw that, right, Dave? Should have had a touchdown pass in the game. So I thought quarterback play was perfect. Literally perfect. So I got A plus. So
is this the first A plus that you've given out this year?
Not overall, but it is for quarterbacks. Yes, definitely for quarterbacks.
Okay.
All right, so running back, I got A. The only reason I don't have A plus is none of them scored a touchdown, but I got no issue with how they played. They averaged over 5 yards a carry and almost 6 yards a carry. So I'll go A for running back. Jalen Wright leading the way again. Wide receiver, I'm going A minus. Even though Ramel Keaton and Squirrel White balled out, Nimrod and Caleb Webb, Squirrel White had 2 drops, was lucky to not have a fumble, and I believe, was it Caleb Webb who dropped that touchdown pass from Gaston Moore in the end zone?
Yeah, but I mean, you got to use this weighted somewhat. I mean, you're talking about the third string in there. I mean, you should you should catch it. You shouldn't drop it. Don't get me wrong, but
I grade the unit as a whole, even with the third string. So the drop, so there's 2 drops by Squirrel and a drop by Caleb Webb in that one. So I gotta go A minus on that one, Dave.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that.
Tight end should be A plus. Jacob Warren, 82 yards and a touchdown. McCollin Castles, 47 yards and a touchdown. Hunter Salmon came in and had 2 catches for 21 yards. However, love Jacob. This was one of his best games. He was epic. He did drop a touchdown pass, though, over the middle. Yep. And I just couldn't avoid that, which brings it down to A.
Yep, very true. Jacob will join us later today, as a matter of fact, to talk about Senior Day festivities, and that'll be brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Enjoy life when you see better. Local vision service for LASIK, cataract surgery, and regular eye examination. Local doctors that care about you. ccteyes.com. Support our sponsors there right down below. Also got a special announcement I want to get to before we get too much further, of a new sponsor that we're super excited about. So, what about the defensive side? Or did I leave out the offensive line?
You left out the offensive line. I'm giving them a C minus. Now, they were playing with one hand tied behind their back, but look, it's very clear Jackson Lampley can't play. Addison Nichols was in the game and was not good, honestly. Dane Davis was having to move around. Gerald Mincy. I mean, they gave up 2 sacks, and you can't give up 2 sacks to Vanderbilt. I'm sorry. So I had to go C minus with offensive line in this one.
Yeah, and Cooper was out of the game early. We'll have his fall report brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning later today. 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. Don't trust a fly-by-night HVAC company. That'll tell you need a brand new unit for like 5 digits. It could cost thousands or more. Don't do it. City Heating, cityheatandair.com. City Heating and Air, cityheatandair.com. Again, support our sponsors. Defensive side, I don't know where he graded, but my, James Pierce is the type of player that if Tennessee ever gets to a championship level like they did in the 90s, he's the type of player or 2 or 3 that if you are sleepwalking, and we don't even know when the Vanderbilt game is going to be anymore, or if Tennessee's going to play Vanderbilt. We think they are. Well, we do know they'll play them next year. We don't know how much further down the line. But he's the type of player, if you're sleepwalking through a November game, James Pierce is still showing up and very well could end up winning the game for you with a strip sack. He was so active. It seemed like he was in the television screen when the offense was on the field at times.
Yeah, you're stealing my torchbearers. I got him. I'm going to name him specifically.
Getting there.
But before we get to James Pierce as a whole, we got to start with the defensive tackles. And I say B minus. Mainly because of just Amari Thomas. I actually thought the defensive tackles didn't play great in the game. They didn't get the push they needed a lot of times. But Amari Thomas held him up, which I stole another torchbearer. But yes, defensive ends as a whole, It's an A. James Pierce was dominant. Tyler Barron had a sack, and Joshua Josephs had a sack in a couple of hurries. So defensive ends was an A. Defensive tackles B minus. Could have been honestly a C for defensive tackles. Linebackers. If they had started Elijah or Jeremiah Tellender the whole game, this would be an A because Aaron Beasley was solid. Jeremiah Tellender is the answer for your middle linebacker over Elijah Herring if you have injuries, right, Dave? He was so much better.
Yeah, Elijah Herring needs to be playing defensive end. I talked to Fred White on that Sunday show with Fred over the weekend. You can check that out. Fred said the guy needs to be playing with his hand down. He needs to be a defensive end. So he agreed with me on that. Darla says, my gosh, it was a terrible Vanderbilt team. It was. So let's wrap up the grades on the defensive side of the ball, and then let's get to your torchbearers.
All right, so linebackers, it's a B, largely because Elijah Herring and Caleb Perry played a lot more great. Defensive backs, C+. I thought outside of a couple of players, they were horrible in the game. Gabe Giuliani, Warren Burrow weren't great. And again, Andre Turrentine can't play. I'm just going to put that out there. Kicking game, C-. Jackson Ross averaging only 39.7 yards per punt, only 1 in the 20. And Charles Campbell missing a 41-yarder. It's a C-. Return game, B. D. Williams played well. So moving on to torchbearers real quick. Number 5, I'm going to give, even though I didn't think the offensive line was great, Dave, I gave Ollie Lane a torchbearer. That was a tough job, even though it was Vanderbilt. Stepping in at center with Cooper Mays out and helping to pave the way for a unit that averaged over 5 yards a carry on the ground. Ollie Lane deserves a shout out. Amari Thomas, another one who deserves a shout out that was part of a unit that wasn't good, but Amari Thomas himself had 4 tackles and he had 2 quarterback hurries, which you always want out of a defensive tackle. Number 3, nothing else to be said. James Pierce Jr. I mean, two hurries, 1.5 tackles for loss. Homeboy was dominant in the game. I think 2 and 1 are pretty obvious, Dave. Number 2 is Ramel Keaton, who had over 100. He had 4 catches for, I think, 122 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was a great final home game for him. And Joe Milton's player of the game. Joe Milton had arguably the best statistical game for a Tennessee football quarterback since 2009. I argue Josh Dobbs and Hendon Hooker had a couple of better ones, but hey, you know what? That performance was in that category.
Agreed. All right, so we're going to visit with Spencer Riley coming up. We're going to talk some balls with the VFL Championship Center from 1998 and his thoughts on 3 balls that Tennessee just has to have back. So you hang tight with me. We've got a lot to get to. The officials get an F-, but good Lord, what else is new? It seems like the officiating somehow gets worse throughout the season. You're going to have to start paying these guys because the NFL's poaching these cats. Did a little bit of digging on that. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. The NFL, if you remember about 5-6 years ago, Caleb went through an officiating issue where a bunch of their guys were questioned. And what did they do? They started hiring better guys. They started paying better money. Some of those guys came out of the SEC. Some of those guys came out of the Big Ten. Some of those guys came out of the Pac-12. That's why you're seeing the officiating be poor across the board. But let me go ahead and tell you, the best officials were undoubtedly in the SEC. I don't think that anybody would question that whatsoever. So, all right, I want to welcome a brand new sponsor to the program, and it's just super cool that we're able to bring him on. You saw him last week. But as the new title sponsor of the program, I wanted to be sure and introduce him properly as the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com. Why Banks & Jones? Other lawyers say they'll go to trial. They won't. They'll settle and settle for less. Banks & Jones is ready to go for trial. For you, truly, Tennessee's trial attorney. Why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. I want to offer this really quick. I know lawyers that say, I'd rather just settle. I don't want to go to trial. There are a lot of lawyers who won't take on medical malpractice. Well, that's not the case at Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones is Tennessee's trial attorney. Spencer Riley up next as the program, again, represented by Banks & Jones and our friend T. Scott Jones. Play to win.